All right, hello and welcome back. It's your boy Hank Hackerson at Hank Hacks Hackers, and we are continuing down our Linux privilege escalation room today. This is one of the more advanced privilege escalation rooms for Linux. We've done a couple of beginner ones. It is not a part of this series, so this is actually part 3 of this particular series, but I did a couple of videos on privilege escalation maybe about a month ago, less than a month ago, because this channel is not even a month old, but it was towards the beginning of my posts. So you'll see a few at the very beginning, and then there's this particular series that this is part 3 of, and this is actually a free room on tryhackme. So this is one of those things that you can do for free without a paid subscription, and you get to launch all of the virtual machines that are here and do all the hacks that we're doing here together. So it'll be really cool if you would actually be able to do this with me, alongside with me, instead of just kind of watching and everything like that. I think you would get the most value from it if you were running the exercises with me together. This is part 3 of this, so if you haven't seen the first 2 parts, definitely make sure to watch the first 2 parts because they go hand in hand. So you would kind of be not just jumping ahead, but you would be missing some crucial information on how to get to where we are right now, especially on the task 3, which is the enumeration task. Especially on that task, that kind of sets you up for the remainder of this room. And of course, we are in the pentest plus pathway with tryhackme, and we are currently here on Linux privilege escalation, and then there's going to be some Windows rooms that we're going to end up doing. This one I've completed already. These last 2 I have not completed, so we're going to end up doing them together, which should be super fun, and we would be learning a lot of things together. That being said, if you get value from this video or have gotten value from anything on my channel, or if you like it, or if you want to just give some support or a shout out, whatever it is, it would mean the world to me if you could like, subscribe, and turn on that notification bell. Because number 1, you would actually get notified the next time that a video comes out, and you can follow along this path with me. But then the second thing is that it helps the YouTube algorithm, especially if you turn on the notification bell and like and drop a comment. That would mean a lot, and it would help us get more reach so that we can expand the community and help grow the channel. And that's literally all I ask from you. There's nothing else that I have. There's nothing else that I'm selling, nothing along that line. So it would mean the world to me if you could actually do that. And that's pretty much it. That's all I'm going to ask. And that's all I'm going to say about that. So without further ado, let's jump into task 8 of this room. So a couple of things that you're going to have to do to actually get this going is that you're going to have to start the virtual machine right here. And this one is the victim machine, which it looks like this. It's basically like a black Linux box. It's going to connect real quick and it's going to show you. It's basically the Linux box right here. And in the beginning of this room, in the last videos, I was essentially just doing all the exercises inside the Linux box. And there's one thing that you can't do, which is copy paste. So this is basically it, this Linux box right here. It's very, very boring. There's nothing else that you can do except use the command line. And we have to keep hacking into this machine and trying to increase privilege in this machine. So the one key point is that you can't copy paste anything that prints into here. So if I went and did ls, for example, let me make sure my keyboard is actually working and it's typing. Is it typing? So it doesn't even let me type right now, which is actually kind of odd. So hopefully we can secure shell into it using the attack box itself. And this one, yeah, this one does let me type into it, so at least that's good. But okay, so apart from not being able to copy and paste anything from that box, right now it seems that I can't even type anything in that box. So the first thing that we got to do is load both of these things. It takes about 2 minutes for both of them to load. When you do the green button right here, it starts the Linux box. And then at the top of the room, there's a blue button called Start Attack Box. And then you click that and it starts this particular one, which is the Ubuntu Linux machine. And so from here, we would just need to SSH into this user that we have right here, which is Karen. So we're going to SSH into Karen's machine, and it's going to be Karen at, and then whatever this IP address is that gets generated for you when you press the green machine. So it's going to be Karen at that IP. You press enter. It asks, do you want to continue? You say yes, and then you type in the password, and it doesn't show you what you're typing. So you just got to make sure that you're typing correctly. And I feel like, there you go. So we got it. So now we're inside the machine for Karen. And then here, if I just do who am I, it'll say that I'm Karen. If I do ID, it'll give me my permissions and my groupings as Karen. And so these are kind of the two basic commands that we're going to type just to see who we are. And then as we do the privilege escalation, and when we get to root, if I do who am I, it's going to say root. And if I do ID, it's going to give me the root permissions. And then from that, we know we've actually escalated privileges. And then from there, we can actually continue with the rest of the hack and get the flags that we need to get. So that is basically how you actually get into the machine. And I do recommend that you use the attack box for the exercises instead of using the actual Linux box. And so I'm going to open that up in full screen so it's easier to manage. And we're going to minimize this particular thing so we don't have to look at it anymore. And I'm working from the screen that you see. So you're going to see everything recording here. But then I also have this open in a different window on my secondary monitor so that I can actually kind of read through these things when we're doing the practical parts of the exercise. And then we can hunt down the answers that we need to hunt down, so on and so forth. So this particular task is showing us how to get privilege escalation with the capabilities of the machine. So there's a binary called capabilities. And it helps manage privileges at a granular level, which I think means at a more like minute specific level. So if the SOC analyst needs to use a tool that needs to initiate socket connections, a regular user will not be able to do that. System administrator does not want to give this user higher privileges so they can change the capabilities of the binary. As a result, the binary would get through its task without needing a higher privileged user. The capabilities man page, man meaning manual, provides details about information on its usage. So it can be get cap, which is to get the listed capabilities. And then there's this nifty little section right here, right there, that says to dev null. That thing removes all of the errors from the screen. So I'll show you exactly what that means. And we did this a bunch of times in the last exercise as we were running it. So if I do get cap and then R, you'll see that, what is it? Oh, I see. So I'm sorry. So it needs to actually be completed. So it needs to be get cap R, and then to dev null. And I think it gives the capabilities of, nope, it's not even that. So let's see what we get if we just do get cap and nothing. So if I do get cap man or man get cap, at least we'll get the manual for get cap. So it seems that the current user that we're in can't even list the capabilities, which seems to be kind of the point of this whole thing, I think, is that we can't even run the get cap binary as the current user that we're at. But these are basically the options of get capabilities. And it says examine file capabilities. So I guess -H will print the quick usage, -N prints any non-zero namespace, R enables recursive search, and V enables to display all search entries. And then we got to do one file per line. So I think I actually need to kind of include a file to see what the capabilities are based on what this thing says. So if I do an ls command, and I guess we are in, the only thing that we have is Vim, and we are inside the home for Karen. So that's basically what it shows right here. So if I do, I guess, get cap Vim, would that work? Yeah, there you go. Okay, so it actually does give us the capabilities of Vim. And it says set UID EP. And then if I do ls.la, which is another thing that we saw, we can see that the Vim permissions right here, it has read, write, execute, and execute, read, and then X. And this initial set is the permissions by the root user, so the person who created it, or the account who created it. And then these are the permissions for the group, and then this is the permission for everybody. And it says that everybody can execute, including our super low privilege user, Karen. So that means that we can actually use Vim. It's a text editor. we can use Vim to run some, probably some exploits and stuff like that. That's probably what we have to do. So if we do get cap R and then /, and that's probably what I missed over there. So that's probably why I couldn't see anything, because I didn't dedicate anything like that. So if I do get cap R, which is recursive, meaning it searches everything inside the root folder, it shows us all of these things. Now, here's why we needed that to-dev null thing. So you see that there's operation not supported for a million things, and then it gives us just a few things at the end that we can do. So if I ran exactly the same command, and then instead this time I do to-dev null, it'll get rid of all of those error messages, and the only thing that it shows us are the things that we can actually use, that we have access to, and then it gives us the capabilities that are attached to it. So trace route, MTR packet, ping, vim, view, that's the last part of the last command. So it starts from here. So what do we have? We have the GST PTP helper. We have trace route, IP utilities, MTR packet, ping, vim, and view. So same thing. So these are the things that we actually can use, and these are the capabilities that they run as, right? So if I zoom back out of here and we go through this, it says that neither Vim nor its copy has the SUID set, and we already ran that. That's what that RWXR, in there should be an S if it had the SUID, which means that set user ID, so that if we ran it, we would be able to run it as the user who created it, which in this case it would be root. So it doesn't have it set, which means we can't run it as root. And the privileged escalation vector is therefore not discoverable when looking for SUID. So we can't do that. So GTFO bins, I like to call it get the fuck out bins, has a good list of binaries that can be leveraged for privileged escalation if we find any set capabilities. We notice that Vim can be used with the following command and payload. So if we ran ID on whoever I am, I guess I can't even, this particular person has 1,000 permissions, so I don't even have 1,000 permission. We only have 1,001, which I think is even less permission than what this person had. But if we run ./vim, ./vim, and then -c, and then this whole thing right here, it would launch a root shell as seen below. So if I do that, and I'm going to try to do that, it should give me a root shell. So at the very least, we can try to see if that will work. So let me type this in, because I can't copy paste, because that was an image that we just saw. So I have to actually manually type that in. So I'm going to type this in and see if it actually works and if it gives us root user privileges. Okay, I think that's it. So if we run that, it runs, and so it did everything. So if we do an ID, oh, we are root. Look at that. So that worked. Simple enough. I mean, I kind of don't even know what the hell that command does. It seems like it imported something from Python 3, and it imported the OS set UID at 0, which is the root UID. And then it executed the bin shell and then it reset it. So I kind of know what this thing did. I kind of know what this command right here does, but in all honesty, I really don't. They just gave us kind of something that we can execute, and we did, and now we're root. And so the questions of the task are, how many binaries have set capabilities? We ran that already, and so if we would have counted it, it would have been 6. After you run this initial command right here, which is the get capabilities command, r/to-dev null, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Those are the things that would have gotten. What other binary can be used through its capabilities, which was the view that we saw, and where's the content of flag 4. And since we're already root, really all we have to do is find right here, and it's going to be name flag 4. I think that's how we do it. And there it is. So it's inside of the home Ubuntu And so we are currently home Karen. So we need to go to, I don't even have to change directory. I could just do cat, which is just read it onto the screen for me. That, and then flag for .txt, and that should bring the flag for us. So there's that. This one actually was one of the more straightforward ones. The previous ones that we had to do had a lot of, we had to actually go get something from the GTFO bins and try to find the routes that we can escalate privileges and so on and so forth. This one was very straightforward. All we had to do was run this command right here, and then that command got us root access. So that was kind of easy, pretty quick, straight to the point. So now we get to move on from this one, and we get to go to privilege escalation cron jobs. So let's see what that looks like. All right, so cron jobs are used to run scripts at specific times, basically scheduled scripts, essentially. They will run with the privilege of their owners and not the current user, so whoever created it. While properly configured cron jobs are not inherently vulnerable, they can provide a privilege escalation vector under some conditions. The idea is pretty simple. If a scheduled task that runs with root privileges, and we can change the script, so we can actually modify it, then our script is going to run with root privileges. Pretty straightforward. So they're stored as cron tabs or cron tables, and to see the next time and date that the thing will run. So if we actually launch this or try to launch it, which would be like that. So cat etc cron tab. If we run that, it should show us everything that's inside that cron tab file, and including the names of the files themselves, or the names of what's supposed to be run. And then it says test such and such at this place, and then it's daily, weekly, and monthly, and it shows you the frequency. So this is on the minute, right? This is on the hour. This will be day of the month. This will be month or day of the week, right? And so that's kind of what that looks like. And if it's blank, if it doesn't have anything, it typically means that it runs on the minute. So you can see that backup.sh, where is that? Backup.sh right here. So backup.sh at the bottom right here. You can see that it runs every minute because it doesn't have any of those things set. It's all blank, which means that if it's all blank, that means it's going to run every single minute. The content of the file shows a very simple script. It just backs up things, right? So it's a bash file, backup time, and then destination. It backs up into this target folder. That's the source folder that it's going to back up, and then that's it. So when you run it, the current user can access the script, meaning whoever we are, Karen can access the script, and we can modify it to create a reverse shell. And then when we do that, we should actually basically be able to run this very simple shell right here. And then when it runs, if we have a netcat listener on our attack box, then we should get a reverse shell on the attack box as the root user, because the root user was the one who created it. So it's always useful to check this thing, because some system admins need to run things at regular intervals. They create a cron job to do this, and after a while the script becomes useless and they delete it, but sometimes they don't delete the relevant cron job. So they may delete the actual script that they needed to use, but they may not delete the scheduled task, which is kind of where that vulnerability falls in. And so there is, root backup.sh, root antivirus.sh, and if we locate that, and then we can modify that, and then the incoming reverse shell would have root privileges. So we're going to do exactly that. We're going to go into our attack box here, and then from here we are going to try to find the cron jobs first by going into cron tabs, and then from there I'm going to kind of expand this a little bit because it becomes easier because the output is a little bit big. So we're going to expand that, and then we are going to see what is available for cron tabs here. So I'm actually still the root user, so I think I need to, because this one had its own machine, didn't it? Yeah, it does. So I'm going to restart this machine, and then we're going to shell back into that machine, and then we're going to restart the whole thing and look at cron tabs. So be right back. All right, here we go. Our machine is up, so I'm just going to copy this IP address and log back in. as Karen, the unprivileged user. So it's going to be Karen, SSH, Karen at the IP address, and then enter. Yes, password 1. And so now we are Karen, or we should be in a minute. All right, here we go. That's that. So let's clear this up real quick so we can have a fresh screen here. Okay, so now the first thing was we were supposed to do cat etc cron tab just to see the cron tables, and here we go. So we have this, and there are 4 files here, right? So there's antivirus sh, or actually 2. So there's this path, but it's the same. And then there's going to be backup.sh and then temp folder test.py. So this is a Python file, and these are shell files. So they all run every minute. So which means that we can essentially modify, hopefully, any one of them so that we can see what we can do with that. And so the way that we can find out what we can do is we can just run the permissions to see who has permissions on it, and if we could actually modify it or use it in any way, right? So it says the first question is how many user-defined cron jobs can you see, and we have 4 right here. So that's the answer for the first one. And then basically it says what is the content of the flag 5 txt, and we can use any of our reverse shells, or we can put a reverse shell inside any of these things, so we can modify and create a netcat listener and then get that reverse shell as root. So in this case, what I'm going to try to do is I'm going to try to see if in the current, so backup.sh is right there. If I do ls.la, it gives me backup.sh, and then it says r, so it seems that I can't write into this. So if I try to do nano backup.sh, it says read 3 lines. I guess I can write into this. Okay, fair enough. So if that's the case, I'm just going to delete all of this, and then I'm gonna type our little reverse shell root, and then from there we should be able to create a reverse shell. So here we go. And that's it. Very simple. So now we're going to do Control O, press Enter, and Control X, and it should be edited and it should be done. So if I do nano backup.sh, it should show me the new script now, and there it is. So I'm going to exit out of this, and that's going to run every minute. So what we got to do now is in a different terminal, we're just going to create a reverse shell, and we did it on port 7777. So it's going to be netcat nlvp 7777, just like that. All right, so it's on port 6666. So now I got to go actually change this into port 6666 because it says that 7777 is already in use. So if I want that shell, I got to change this to the listening port. So here we go. And there we go. All right, so we're gonna wait a minute, and we should have a reverse shell on this one as root. Okay, so here we go. This, I had a simple oversight for this particular task, and I thought I had created the wrong file or something like this, but there's a very simple command that you have to do to give executable permissions to whatever backup file or a shell or any kind of file that you created. And so the idea is you go to the home folder of Karen, and then there's something called the backup.sh file, and I did this with AntiVirus.sh because I thought that maybe that was the issue, because based on what they said is that sometimes a previous analyst will create this shell and then they'll delete the shell file, but they won't delete the cron job. And I thought, okay, maybe it's because I used the wrong file, and so I'm supposed to do this with the antivirus file. So I created both of them, and they both say the same exact thing. So if we run cat backup.sh as well as cat antivirus.sh, They both literally say the same thing, but the issue was that they didn't have executable permissions. So that was what the problem was. And so then I was like, oh, you know what, like literally facepalm. I was like, oh, you know what, I think I need to give this thing an executable permission. And so we did the command chmod plus x backup.sh to actually give executable permission to the backup.sh file, and in less than a minute it ran and it gave us the connection. And just so you know, all of this has to be done inside the home folder of Cron, because that's the only place that we actually have permissions to create files, to modify files, and to give permissions to files. And so as soon as I did that, lo and behold, we got our root shell listening on port 6666 on our attack box. So now that we're here, we can actually proceed to answer these questions, which says how many user-defined cron jobs. We already did that. What is the content of flag 5? And then what is Matt's password? And this is going to be, we have to pull the hash file. So first and foremost, let's go and try to find the flag5.txt, and it's going to be inside Ubuntu. So we do cat home ubuntu flag5.txt, and so there's the answer to that. Now we need to find the etc shadow file, and that's where all the password hashes are stored, and this is Matt's password hash. And so it goes from here to here. This is his entire password hash. So we're going to copy this, and what I'm going to do is I'm just going to create a new terminal, and inside this new terminal I'm going to create a file called hash.txt, and I'm going to paste Matt's hash into it. Then we're going to do Control O to write, enter, Control X, and now if we run nano hash.txt, we see that his hash is in here. So now what we do is we run John the Ripper, and John the Ripper has a very nifty, I mean, it's amazing in a lot of different places, but it can do a lot of different things. And rocku.txt, by the way, so if you don't know how to use John the Ripper, I'm gonna just take you to a great place. It's called youtube.com/HankHacksHackers, and then you'll land on this page, and then you click on the search button right here, and then you type in John, and it will pull up John the Ripper, cracking passwords with John the Ripper, and it shows you a bunch of different things that you can do with John the Ripper. And I think I didn't, unfortunately, I have to actually fix this so you have timestamps and everything. But the time where it starts talking about cracking hashes is around the 8:45 time, so right here. And we start talking about how to actually use John's commands to be able to hack hashes and crack them and so on and so forth. So from this, we just know that it's John, whatever the option is, and the path to the file. So in this situation, it's going to be John. We're going to use the word list rocku.txt that's inside our attack box, and then we're going to go to the hash.txt, and then it should give us the specific password. And so there's that. Oh, you know what? I think that's what I did not do correctly. We're going to take this whole thing, including Matt, because it needs to include the whole thing. So we're going to take the whole thing, and then we're going to paste it inside our hash file, and then run John. And there it is. So the full thing needs to be from this little dot all the way to the beginning of Matt, and then it'll give that as I saved it as hash one the same way, and I ran the same exact command. I just used hash1.txt, and it ran it for us, and there it is. For Matt, we have 1 2 3 4 5 6, and that is indeed his password right there. So pretty simple, straightforward. It just happens to be that I forgot the one little thing that I was supposed to do, which is grant permissions to the file by using chmod plus x to give it the executable permission, and then from there the thing ran in less than a minute, and we got root permissions. And then from there, so where's our root shell? This is our root shell, and from there we found the flag, and then root can read the etc shadow file to get all of the hashes of everybody's passwords. And so that way we got this wonderful hash for Matt, and we were able to get his password. So we are now going to terminate this machine, and it will terminate all of our sessions inside of our reverse shells. And this is all done. So now I can move on to the next one, which is privilege escalation using the path. All right, so we're gonna start the path machine here, and it's gonna come up in a minute. And so we gotta kind of figure out what we're doing here. And so the path environmental variable is something that a bunch of things are saved in. So this is really what it looks like. So you have the user local sbin, bin, and then user sbin, bin, etc., user games, all this stuff. So this is the environmental variable, okay? And inside of this, typically we can put some things. And if you type thm to the command line, there are locations Linux will look for an executable called thm. The scenario below will give us a better idea. So what folders are located under path? Does your current user have write privileges over any of these folders? Can you modify path? And is there a script application that you can start that will be affected by that vulnerability? So for demo purposes, we're going to be using this particular script, which is this thing. And so first what we want to do is we want to, it says that we're going to be in Alper's home, or whoever the user is, and we're going to run cat path xp, and it's a C script, it's a C file. So it's this thing. So that's the script. And we're going to run a compiler, and we're going to output it onto path, and then we're going to chmod, so we're going to change the user permissions on this thing. And then from there, we're going to see that we actually have it. And if we run it, we should be able to actually get the reverse shell. And so they did the lsl command just so we can see we have executable permissions on it. And there's a super or set UID permission on it as well. And then once executed, path will look for an executable named thm inside, because that's what the script said. And if any writable folder is listed under path, we could create a binary named thm under that directory and have our path script run it. As the SUID bit is set, the binary will run with root privilege. So if we look for any writable files or writable folders, I guess, by using find writable and then of course toDev null to get rid of all the errors, the output should be something like this. And in this case, they cut the first or the second field of it so that we can actually see what it is, and then we sorted it. That's basically what they ran, but you could just run it just by itself like this without doing any sort or anything, and you should be able to see what you can run. So these are all the things that we can run, and some scenarios present some interesting things. So if we run the echo path again, we'll see that what is in here. So there is the snap bin. So there's bin, there's local sbin, user local sbin, user sbin, user bin, sbin itself, and then bin, so on and so forth. So we see a number of folders under the user directory, thus it could be easier to run our writable folder. So search one more. So if we find writable and then grep user and then cut off whatever and then sort it, you'll see that you see user lib and user share, and those are things that are writable, meaning we can write to them. So we could run this also to find something alternatively. The subfolders under user are not writable. So if we do echo path one more time and then export path equals temp into the path variable, now you do echo path again, and then the temp folder is going to be inside right here at the beginning. The temp folder is going to be inside the environmental variable, and then from there we can actually go into the temp folder and start doing some things. So we can write bin bash inside a thm variable, change the permissions of thm, and then list it, and then it says boom, you have read, write, execute permissions on this thing. And so who am I? I'm Alper, my ID is Alper. I'm going to run that path variable. Who am I? I'm root. That's I sped through this because I'm actually going to do the exercise so you can see what it looks like in a live environment. But that's basically what we're doing. What we're doing is we're putting a script, a C script, inside a new file called path. And then what we want to do is we want to put that path script inside a folder that we have write permissions on. And then we're going to put that folder inside the path binary, the path environmental variable. And then since that's there, it should be able to run with root permissions, and it should be able to actually execute and give us root access. So the first part of this, as always, is for us to get access to the new machine right here by doing a secure shell into it. So let's do that first, and then we'll run the rest of the exercise. All right, so first and foremost, we're going to SSH into Karen's new machine, which is going to be under that IP, and then same password. And we should get in here in a couple of seconds, and there we are. And so now let's clear this up just so we have a clean screen. What we want to see is what's on our path variable. So we're gonna do that, and it should show us basically the same thing that we saw in the exercise. And then what we want to find is what is available or what is writable. So first thing I guess that we're going to do is we're going to create a new C file. So we're inside the root directory, and the let me see, who am I am Karen inside the root directory, ls. So if I go into cd home and do ls, there's Matt, Murdoch, and Ubuntu. So let's go into Ubuntu, ls. There's nothing in here, ls, la. There's all of these things in here. So we can go back, do an ls, and we're right here. So let's go back to the root folder here. For the purposes of this exercise, we're going to run a very basic script that essentially just creates something called THM, or tries to launch a system binary called THM, but it can be replicated with any binary or any name. But for the purpose of this, we're just going to use THM. So in the exercise, I think they go inside of the alper. Is there an alper here? There's no alper here. So we're just gonna go back into our root folder. That's fine. Okay, so first they created the script. So I wonder if we just first need to do that, or if we need to just figure out what is writable. But let's just create the script first. Who cares? So first and foremost, we're going to nano, or try to nano, and see if we can write this little script for creating a binary called THM. All right, so there it is. These are all of the folders into which we can actually write something. And none of these folders, unfortunately, it seems, are writable. So it says grep user. So since we actually had user in our specific path binary, or path variable, excuse me, we're going to try to see that inside of that, if there's anything that is writable for us. So snap, core, and then URL lib seem to be the only two places that are writable for us, but from what I saw, I don't think any of those are included for us. So we don't have URL lib in here, or user lib, and we don't have snap core. So now we have snap bin, but we don't have snap core. But there is something called the temp folder that we can write into. So what we can do is we can try to put the temp folder inside our path variable. And if that's possible, that means that we can actually put our script inside the temp folder, and then that should be able to run everything for us. So we're gonna go into the temp folder itself, and then we're going to put the script in there, and then from there we're gonna transfer the temp folder into the path variable. All right, so we found something very interesting. First, we found there's another folder that we can actually write into. And if you remember, when we went into home, there were 3 different folders in here, and there was Ubuntu, Murdoch, and mat. And so if we do lsla, we can see that the mat folder is executable but not writable. The Murdoch folder has full permissions. Ubuntu is also executable but not writable. So we can actually go into Murdoch, and from here we can do the rest of our work. Okay, so just refreshing the screen. Inside the Murdoch folder, there are 2 things. There is a test script that if I open it, it's just a bunch of jargon. So I'm not going to do that because it's going to fill up the whole screen. But then there's an interesting Python file right here. So if we just open that up or try to read that, it says it imports the OS and system, and it tries to run something called THM. So if we put anything inside THM, then it should run. And it's kind of interesting because this is much simpler than everything that was described in the task outline. So for this particular example, we're trying to find something that is called flag6, right? So flag6.txt is what we're trying to find. And I forgot to get rid of all of the errors. So let's clear that up one more time. And we have ls, and then we have the THM. So let's do that one more time. And so that's what that looks like. So now I'm going to do, again, find name flag6.txt, and then I'm going to do 2 dev null to get rid of all the errors. And there's flag6. It's inside mat's home folder. So what we can do is we can put something like a command, right, inside that THM variable that the system is trying to run. And that variable could be flag6, or excuse me, that command could be flag6, and it's going to be inside that THM variable. So now we run this, and now we run this, and there's now THM inside that. So if we go ahead and change the permissions of this, so chmod 777 or +x, I guess, and we do that, and now we do lsla to see what the permissions of everything are. There is the thm.py file that only has readable permissions. Now our new THM variable has executable. We might even be able to change the permissions, so let's test this out, see if we can change the thm.py, and we can't, so that's fine. But we did create a new variable called THM, and inside that there's this execute portion right here where it says cat, meaning read that. And so now what we can do is we can run this test thing, which is this full-on script. There's a lot going on inside that script. So what we can do is we can run that, since we can essentially see if we can run thm.py. So let's try that first. So there's an error with that because the first shebang line unfortunately is not working. So what if I do usr bin python 3 maybe? If I do this and try to run thm.py, did that work? No, it gives me the same error. So we can try to run test, and if we run that, it says that there is no variable called thm, which is weird because there is a variable called thm. So let's see what the troubleshooting is that we can find here. I think one of the problems that I had, so the whole thing is that we're trying to work with this path variable. And one of the challenges that I had, or one of the mistakes that I made, is that I didn't account for this. So we're still supposed to deal with this. So we can export something inside that path variable, which would be the actual folder that we can write in. So it's the Murdoch folder. And we can put it inside the path variable like that. So if we do this, and sorry for all the back and forth, it makes, I understand that it might be kind of confusing, so hopefully it won't be too confusing at the end when I'll just overview everything, because I'm also troubleshooting as I go along. So when I echo path, now we have the home Murdoch folder inside the path, which means that we can actually run it. And since that is the case, and it's inside our path variable, the rest of what we just did, putting the cat command to read the flag inside Matt's folder, and then writing or modifying the THM variable that we just created, so on and so forth. Hopefully, and I have fingers crossed here, hopefully when I run test again, it will actually work. And there it is, it does work. So the thing that was missing was that everything that I had created inside of this wasn't inside the path variable. That's the issue. And they had created, they being tryhackme, they had previously created this test script for us that would actually run everything that was inside of this path variable. And unfortunately, the executable folder that we had, that we created this little script in, did not exist. It wasn't inside the path variable. So first we needed to get into a place that we could write in, and we did that with getting into home Murdoch. And so I'm gonna kind of review everything that we just did in this task. So the first command that we ran so that we can actually find a place to write in was trying to grep for a writable place. So it would be find So that's the full command. And so you're finding a writable thing, a writable folder. You're getting rid of all of the errors that would come. And then you're searching for home, because that would be a name that would be applicable to our current user that might actually be useful. And that's something that we could have gone into, and we're searching for something that's inside home. We're cutting all the excess. So this basically just cuts all the excess, and it gives you the actual name of the directory itself, and then you're sorting it. And so when you do that, and did I miss something? Oh, this thing right here is not a vertical. Oh, I need to do the whole thing one more time. Okay, so it's going to be, I'm just going to see if I can copy paste this instead of typing it out. That might be way simpler. Yeah, there we go. So there it is. So find writable, so on and so forth, grep home out of it to see if you can find it. And then it says cannot read no source file or directory. And again, that's so funny that all of these things kind of just happen. So boom, and then you put a dash in front of it. There you go. There you go. It finally worked. Okay, so the first thing that you want to do is find a writable folder, and you do it with that. And make sure that all of the pipes are written correctly, and you have the dashes in the right place, so on and so forth. So you do that, and you have found a folder into which you can actually write. So when we go inside of that, or before we even do all that, we just need to make sure that we put this inside the path, because the path is the environmental variable that runs for the current user that we're on. And that particular folder, home Murdoch, is something that we can actually write into. So what we would need to do is we would need to export the path, whatever we want it to be, meaning path equals home Murdoch. You want to export that into the path variable. I'm not going to press enter again because it's going to do it twice. But that's the command. You export for path, that little folder, home/Murdoch, and then colon, a $ path, meaning that it's going to go inside the path variable. Anytime there's a $, that means you're dealing with a variable and you're assigning something to a variable. So you have that, and now that home folder that's writable is inside of the path variable, the environmental variable that we can write onto. Now that we have that, and now that we are inside our home Murdoch directory and we can write something into it, then we're going to create a small little thing called that THM variable, because that's what's attached to the test file that was created for us by tryhackme. And so this specific script, the test file, is this thing that runs this whole thing. So they just created this, and they wrote it for us, and it's available to us, and it was named test in this particular case. All of this right here, all of this that you see right here, this is what's super confusing, because at first I thought I had to do all of these things, and it makes it a little bit confusing to try to actually make that work. But I could have technically written it. It was pre-written for me. Once being inside the home Murdoch folder, I could have tried to write this, and I mean, for the purposes of execution, I'm going to try to write it just to kind of give you a live example of this. So hopefully it won't be an issue. So we do nano, and in this case, we'll do whatever. We're going to do path exp.c, and unfortunately we can't. So you already see that there's an issue with being able to run this. And even if I just type in nano in here and try to save it, oh, it did work. Okay, so great. So that means that I can actually write into this because I'm inside the home Murdoch file. So if that's the case, then I'm going to actually write the full script. Oh yay, this is exciting. Okay, there's our script, and then we're gonna write it and we're gonna close it out. And so now we actually have that script. So if I try to just show this onto the screen, there it is. And the next thing that I could potentially do is I could actually run the compiler to make that into the path variable that we would want it to be. So for example, it would be path.this, and then output it onto a path and make it writable. And general compiler is not existing. So you see, this is where certain things kind of run amok for us. So we were able to write it, but we can't do a GCC compiler to actually make it work. So that's why I think they said for the purposes of this exercise, there's something that's already been established for us. And this is, I would say this is one of the more complicated ones. So if you don't grasp it right away, it's fine. You can just go through the motions just so at least you get some of these things running and you kind of understand what you just did, or kind of. It doesn't, you don't need to fully grasp it, because going through the motions I think is more important than not going through the motions and not doing the work. And that's kind of what we're here to do, is just try to do the work, so at the very least it's inside your cells, it's inside your bones. And so from there, if this had worked and we could run the compiler and we could actually turn this into our own little script for the variable, then the rest of it would be the same. So you have the writable folder that you found, then you were able to transfer that folder inside the path variable at home. And since we are inside this writable folder, there is something that was already existed for us, which was the test script. And we needed to make sure that we created something called THM that would run with this Python script. So that THM variable was this little command of, hey, I want you to just read this for me. I want you to read this flag for me. That's all we did. And then we put that inside this, and then thm.py executes that. Oops, cat thm.py. That executes it. So it says try this, if not just exit. And so it's trying to execute something called THM, and we already created that. It previously didn't exist. And then the test script, I'm going to try to read this, and so just so you can see how crazy this looks. This is what the test script looks like. And so this is already doing a lot of the work behind the scenes for us. And it's really, really insane. So it's, a lot of these things aren't visible, as you can see, and it doesn't really make sense, and that's fine. But what we need to know is that it's a part of the task exercise, and the fact that this is the thing that needs to run, because anything else that we try to run doesn't work. So out of all of these things, if I tried to do Python thm.py, that wouldn't work. Python 3 or Python 2 thm.py, that wouldn't work. Python 3, that doesn't work because the syntax of the thm.py is calling on a Python path that seems to be incorrect. So this syntax right here doesn't seem to be right, or at least that's what it's saying. And typically you need to put shebang, and this needs to be hashtag exclamation and then this path right here, which we can't edit because it's not editable. And if I try to do chmod 777 thm.py, I don't have permissions to change the permissions for that. So all of this just to show you that this is the reason why we had to run it the way that we did, because I want you to see that none of these things are modifiable, so on and so forth. And I may be even prolonging this longer than I need to, so on and so forth. I just want you to kind of understand the philosophy and the methodology behind why this whole thing did work. And then from there, we were able to just write the path itself, or the script itself that reads the thing for the flag, and we were able to extract the flag by just executing test, because that test ends up going through the Python file and tries to run this thing called THM, and inside the THM there is that little command that says, hey, I want you to read this flag for me. So all of that just to read this little flag. But it's a privilege escalation, and by the way, we're still Karen. So we're not root at any point in this thing. We just took advantage of certain variables, including the path environmental variable, and that's what gave us access to this. So that's the long-winded version of this. All right, NFS, also known as the network file sharing configuration, is kept inside the etc exports file, and this file is created during the server installation for NFS. So another vector that is more relevant to CTFs and exams is misconfigured network shells, and it can be sometimes seen during penetration testing engagements. So when you do cat etc exports, it shows the access control list for file systems to NFS clients that can be exported to NFS clients. And then for NFS v2, NFS v4, etc., these are the locations of this and the host names that are associated with it. And then we have the temp folder, the mount shared folder, and we have the backups folder. So the critical element for this vector is the no root squash option that you can see above here. So you see no root squash right here. So these are the things that allow us to run this exploit. So for example, the backups folder has no root squash and the temp folder has no root squash. By default, it'll change the root user to NFS nobody and strip any file from operating with root privileges. If the no root squash option is present on a writable share, we can create an executable with SUID bit set and run it on the target system. So we start by enumerating mountable shares from our attack machine, and so show mount E on this thing, and you just run it on the IP address of the victim machine. And then from there, we're going to mount one of the no root squash shares into our attack machine and then start building the executable. So we would create a directory in the temp folder for it. And then from that, because it says that this is the temp and then mount, so on and so forth. So this is all happening on the attack box. So on there, we're going to create one of the no root squash shares into our attack machine. And we need to first create a directory for it, because once you do that, it's going to dump everything from that directory inside our place. So this one is doing the backups mount. So it says backups on attack machine. So we're going to create in our temp folder this thing. You already got that. And then as we can set SUID bits, a simple executable that will run bin bash on the target system will be this thing. And so once you install this script, we can actually compile it. Since we're on our attack box, it should already have the compiler, and we can have it and just make sure that we have the SUID bit set. So once you do the compilation and it's done, you change the permissions and add the super set UID or super user permission, and then you can see that now we have the NFS that's executable inside our share. And then from there, we can go into the target system. So if we go into the target system, we should be able to see inside that share folder that we have this new thing that we just created. And then we can run it, and it should give us our root privileges. So this one's kind of straightforward. So all we need to do is get into, first off, we need to create a directory on our attack box, mount that whatever is available on their side onto our side, and then in our side, we're going to create the compiled script, and then from there it should show up in the victim's machine. So before SSHing into the victim machine, we gotta first find all of their mount stuff, and so for that I'm just gonna copy this clipboard because I need to be able to actually find it on my end. So the command itself, I think it's called show mount. It's very simple. Yeah, it's very, very simple. So we're gonna first just clear this up here, and we're gonna zoom in here, and we're gonna go do this show mount E, and then we're going to paste that, and there's that. And so now it shows us we have the backup, the temp, and then Ubuntu shared folder. So in this case, what we want to do is, I guess, use the backups. We're just going to use the backups so that we can mount that onto our system, and then from there we're going to actually, I think we need to, first and foremost, I kind of got ahead of myself. I do need to SSH into the system as Karen so I can see what is inside that exports folder. So inside the exports folder, we will be able to find what has the no squash option, right? No root squash. So now that we're inside Karen's folder, we're going to do etc exports, and it'll show us all these things. And so, okay, so backup does have no root squash set, and so does the temp folder. So both of those are fine. So that way now we can actually go into our own temp folder and make something, I guess, what is it? We'll just follow along with their naming process. We'll just do attacker backups. And we have that. And so what we can do now is we can do a mount of their stuff from their backups. So paste the IP address and then / backups. From their backup, not backups, because that's what the name of the actual folder is here. And then if we just confirm that, it's also called backup here in the exercise file, just so you don't have any extra errors. In the directions of the exercise, theirs is called backups, mine is called backup, and yours might be named differently as well. So just make sure that you actually use the proper name for this, and there needs to be a colon right after the IP address, and then / and then the backup. So then you have that, and then now you want to dedicate your own directory that you just made to where you want to make that dump. And so there is that. So it just mounted it, access denied by server, while trying to do the backup. Okay, so the first one gave me access denied, but the second one worked. So if I actually go into the temp folder now and do an ls, and it should show me that I actually have in my attacker backups. So if I do cd attacker backups, in here I should see everything that was inside that temp folder, which is nice. So it's useful. So now that we're inside of this share, we can go ahead and create the script that we're supposed to create. We do that simply by just running nano from our attack box, and we're going to call this nfs.c for the compiler, and then in that we're going to paste the actual script itself, or I guess I can't paste it because it's not pastable, so I have to write it manually. So give me 1 second. And there is our little script, set GID, set UID to 0. There's actually an error here because the first one says O instead of 0, and it needs to say 0. So 0 is the root permission, right? And then you're gonna run the bin bash, and that's basically it. So very, very simple script. We're going to write that, and we're gonna close that, and we're gonna do ls, and now we see that we have the nfs.c here, and so we should be able to also just run the compiler to turn that into the regular executable. So, and that completed without an error, so we just run that, and now we have both of these. We have the NFSC file originally, and then now we have the new executable NFS. And so this should show up on the exact folder inside the temp directory in the victim machine. So if I go into the temp directory here and run ls command, there should be these things inside it now, and we actually see that they are both inside it here. So what we need to do now is we need to actually just run it and make sure that it's all good. And I think the permissions themselves, no, there's one thing that I missed, which is I didn't give the super user or the SUID permission to NFS. So now that I do, so if I run that again, we'll see that this actually has the SUID permission attached to it. So if I go here and if I run lsla, it should also show that the NFS has the SUID permission attached to it. So now in this situation, if I run this, we now have a root user where previously we had Karen. And that's pretty much it. So this one was a little bit more straightforward than the last one that we just did. And so how many mountable shares we can find? It was 3. How many shares have the no root squash option? It was 3. Gain a root shell on the target system, and then find flag number 7. So we found the mountable shares, and then on this situation, when we went and ran the command to try to see which ones had said no root squash. So home backup, no root squash, temp, no root squash, and then even the shared folder has no root squash. So 3 of them had no root squash. There were 3 mountable shares available. We gained our root access. So now we just need to find that file, which is, what is it? Flag 7, I think it said, right? Flag 7, yeah. So we're gonna find the flag 7 file. And remember that as you're running this, always run to dev null, because there's going to be a lot of error messages. And so it should find that file for us real quick. And there it is. So now I got to just do cat home mat flag7.txt. And there is the flag. And just like that, we were able to finish this particular task. So let's run into the capstone attack here, the capstone challenge, and it's going to be our combined efforts and everything that we just learned to make all of these things happen. So we're going to combine all of the things to be able to escalate our privileges and find our flags.